They thought I was too old to notice, too fragile to understand what they were doing behind my back. But what my daughter and her husband didn't know is that the land they tried to steal from me was hiding a secret that would destroy them both. My name is Margaret Hale, I'm 68 years old, and I've lived on this ranch for more than 40 years. It wasn't just land to me. It was the last piece of my husband, Frank, who died building every corner of it with his hands. The mornings here used to begin with the sound of horses running, the smell of dew on wild grass, and sunlight cutting through the fog like a quiet promise. I never thought this land would turn into a battlefield, a place where my own daughter would stand against me. Her name is Clara, my only child. She was always my pride, my reason to keep living after Frank passed away. But everything changed when she married Ethan. Ethan was charming, too charming for his own good. The kind of man who could talk his way into anyone's trust, and lie with a smile that looked honest enough to fool God himself. First I tried to love him. He called me Mom, brought me flowers, fixed the barn lights. But behind those gestures was something sharp, something hungry. One evening, I overheard them talking on the porch. I wasn't supposed to hear. But at my age you learn to creep, especially when your heart starts sensing danger. If we sell it now, Ethan whispered, we could move to Denver, start the business. Your mom doesn't even use half the land anymore. Clara sighed. Ethan, it's her home. She loves this place. She won't even know what hit her, he said, with that confident grin I used to trust. Old folks cling to memories. We'll tell her it's for taxes or repairs. She'll sign anything. I stood there, frozen. Every word felt like a knife sliding deeper into my back. My daughter, my baby, was part of it. The night swallowed me whole. I sat in my rocking chair, staring at the framed photo of Frank. Tears blurred his face as I whispered, they're trying to sell what you built, Frank, our life, our sweat, our love. But then something inside me hardened. I remembered what Frank used to say. Never show them all your cards, Maggie. Always keep one secret close. And I did. For 40 years, I'd kept one secret that even Clara didn't know about. A secret that could change everything about this ranch. The next morning I made breakfast like nothing had happened. Smiled, poured coffee, and asked about their plans. Ethan was cheerful, too cheerful. He said they had found a great buyer who wanted to help expand the property. He didn't know that I'd already started digging into his lies. When Ethan left for town, I went straight to the drawer in my late husband's study. Beneath old receipts and letters, there was a small iron box. Inside it, wrapped in oil paper, lay the original ownership deed of the ranch, and another document Frank made me promise never to share until the right time came. That right time was now. Ethan thought the ranch was just an old woman's inheritance. But buried under its soil, under the western fence line, was something my husband and I discovered decades ago. A silver vein running deep and rich, untouched and undocumented. We kept it hidden from the world. Frank feared corporations would swarm us, tear the land apart, and destroy our peace. So he filed a second deed, quietly, legally, sealing mineral rights in my name only. No one knew, not even Clara. Days passed. Ethan grew impatient, visiting buyers, whispering on the phone. Clara started acting distant, avoiding my eyes at dinner and smiling less. The guilt was eating her, I could tell. But Ethan had her wrapped around his greedy little finger. One evening he came to me with papers, all printed, polished, and dressed in legal jargon. "Mom," he said sweetly, "this will help you. You'll have less tax, more comfort. You can still live here, we just handle the finances. It's just paperwork." I looked into his eyes. He didn't flinch. The man had mastered deceit. Smiled back. "Of course, Ethan. Let me read it first." He nodded, kissed my forehead and walked away, thinking the trap was set. But I wasn't the one trapped anymore. That night, I called my old friend and attorney, Tom Reynolds, the same man who helped Frank with the original filings. He still owed Frank a favor, and I told him everything. Tom laughed softly on the phone. "Well, Maggie, looks like it's finally time to teach that boy a lesson he won't forget." The next few days I played the part perfectly. I acted forgetful. I asked silly questions about signatures and checks. I even told Ethan I might sign soon. He bought every bit of it. So did Clara. On the 5th evening, they arranged a small dinner to celebrate. Candles. Fake smiles. I sat across the table, watching my daughter laugh at Ethan's jokes. Her laughter used to warm me once. Now it just echoed like something broken. Before dessert, Ethan handed me a pen. "Mom, it's time. Just your signature and we'll handle the rest." I took the paper, looked at Clara, and said softly, "Honey, are you sure this is what you want?" She hesitated for a moment, just a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But Ethan pressed her hand under the table, and she nodded. My hand trembled as I held the pen. Sign. But not the paper he thought I did. That was the night they thought they'd won. But the real war hadn't even started yet. Because the document I gave Ethan wasn't the sale agreement. It was a legal transfer of liability, binding them both to every debt, tax, and unpaid repair cost under my ranch's name. All perfectly legal. All witnessed and sealed. And when they'd finally realize what they'd signed, it would already be too late. They thought they were playing me. But I learned long ago, the quiet ones hold the sharpest knives. What they did next changed everything. People think revenge is about anger. But real revenge is patience. It's the quiet smile when your enemies celebrate their victory, while you're the one writing the ending. That night after I signed the papers, Ethan looked like a king. He raised his glass of wine, toasting his own success. Clara laughed, her voice trembling between guilt and relief. And I just smiled, because I knew that smile would be the last peaceful one they'd ever have. When they went to bed, I stepped out onto the porch. The moonlight touched the old barn, the fences, the open fields. And for a moment, I could almost hear Frank's voice again. "They'll never understand what this land really is, Maggie. It's not dirt. It's a legacy." I closed my eyes and whispered, "Don't worry, Frank. I'm still guarding it." Over the next week, Ethan behaved like a man who had just conquered an empire. He made phone calls, invited his real estate agent over, and even started showing potential buyers around. He didn't even wait for the ink to dry. Clara followed him like a shadow, trying to believe this was all for our future. She kept saying, "Mom, you'll love Denver. We'll find you a nice apartment near the city." I'd smile gently, serving her coffee, pretending to forget her betrayal each day. Inside, I was watching the noose tighten. Because the moment Ethan started dealing with buyers, he legally became responsible for every financial liability tied to the ranch, thanks to the document he'd proudly taken home. And the ranch wasn't debt-free. No, not at all. Frank and I had taken small local loans decades ago to fix the irrigation and barns. Nothing major, just enough to build and sustain. But I'd never cleared the titles on those intentionally, because Frank had told me, never trust paper too much. Sometimes a loophole can save your life. That loophole was about to save mine. And destroy Ethan's. 3 days later my attorney Tom called. Maggie, I've sent out the legal notifications. The deed transfer's complete. Officially in their name now. You want to see their faces when they get the tax letters. Smiled. No, Tom. I'll let the letters do the talking. The following week, Ethan received the first envelope. He ripped it open at the breakfast table. I watched from across, stirring my tea. His smile vanished. What the hell is this? He muttered. Clara looked confused. What's wrong? It says we owe $15,000 in back property taxes and repairs. How's that possible? I leaned forward slightly, keeping my tone soft. Oh dear, maybe that's why Frank never wanted to sell. That ranch has old costs buried deep. I'm sure you'll figure it out though. You're the smart one. He looked at me sharply, realizing for the first time something wasn't right. Within a week, more letters came. Debt notices, maintenance penalties. Even a notice from the state confirming the land wasn't eligible for sale due to protected mineral rights. That line, mineral rights, was the real dagger. Because by signing that document, Ethan had taken full liability for a property that couldn't legally be sold without government permission. He'd basically trapped himself in ownership of a land he couldn't use, couldn't sell, and couldn't afford. The night he found out, I heard him yelling at Clara through the walls. Your mother knew. She played us. She planned this. Clara's voice trembled. Ethan, stop shouting. You pushed me into this. She didn't even want to sell. Oh, don't act innocent now. You were part of it. The sound of glass breaking echoed through the house. I sat silently on the porch, rocking back and forth, watching the stars above my husband's land. The same land that was quietly reclaiming its justice. The next morning, Clara came to me in tears. Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen. Mom, please. What's happening? Ethan says we owe thousands. You knew about this, didn't you? I looked at her. My daughter, the child I once rocked to sleep. And for a moment my heart cracked. But then I remembered the whispers I'd overheard. The betrayal in her voice when she agreed to sell my home behind my back. Clara, I said quietly, do you remember what your father used to say? Every seed of greed grows into a weed that chokes the hand that planted it. You helped him plant it. She shook her head, crying harder. I didn't mean to, Mom. I just thought. I thought it would make life easier. Easier for whom? Asked coldly. For the man who wanted to sell my memories. Or for you, who forgot where you came from. She fell silent. And for the first time in months, she looked small again. Like my little girl who used to run barefoot through these fields. I didn't know about any of this, she whispered. The debts, the rights, none of it. I smiled faintly. Of course you didn't. You never asked. You just signed away your soul because he told you to. She lowered her head, whispering, I'm sorry, Mom. I reached out, touched her hand, and said softly, sorry doesn't fix broken trust. Some things you lose once. And forever. By the end of that month, Ethan's world was collapsing. His investors backed out. His credit cards were maxed. He started drinking, shouting, blaming everyone, especially me. One evening, he stormed into my living room, waving papers in his hands. You old witch. You did this. You tricked me. I didn't even flinch. I just looked him in the eye and said, no, Ethan. You tricked yourself. I just made sure you saw the truth. He threw the papers on the table. You'll regret this, old woman. I'll find a way to ruin you. I smiled faintly. You already did, son. But the difference is, I knew how to survive it. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. And when his car sped off down the dirt road, I felt something break free inside me. Not joy, not revenge. Just a quiet, lonely peace. Away. It just balances the scales for a moment, before the silence returns. Because deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of the end. Revenge doesn't bring back love. Doesn't heal what betrayal takes away. It just balances the scales for a moment, before the silence returns. I walked along the old fence line, feeling the soil beneath my hands. This land had been my life, my sanctuary. And under its surface lay the secret that Frank and I had protected for decades. Decades ago, while digging a well near the western pasture, Frank had discovered a small vein of silver, buried just under the barn foundation. Not enough to make headlines, not enough for greedy corporations to notice, but enough to be worth a fortune. Frank had drawn detailed maps, hid the exact location, and transferred ownership rights to me. Under strict promise. Never tell anyone until the time was right. That time was now. I smiled to myself. Ethan believed he owned this ranch. He believed he could sell it, profit from it, and control my daughter. But he didn't know what lay beneath his feet. The next morning I acted normal, just like before. I mended fences, fed the horses, and poured coffee. Ethan strutted around, bragging to Clara about the buyers lining up for the ranch deal. Mom, once this is sold, we'll move to Denver, he said smugly. You'll have more comfort, more freedom. I nodded politely. That's lovely, Ethan. And inside I was already calling my attorney, Tom. We had prepared a special notice to the buyers, explaining the ranch could not be sold because of unregistered mineral rights and legal claims tied to the silver beneath. It would halt every transaction and legally bind Ethan and Clara to the property until the claim was resolved. 3 days later, Ethan received the official letters. This time they weren't about taxes. These were government notices. Property sale suspended. Unresolved mineral rights claim. People spend their lives chasing what they can see. Money, power, possessions. But the truth often hides beneath the surface, where only patience can uncover it. After Ethan's tantrums and Clara's tears, I retreated to the barn late one night. Unauthorized extraction or transfer of subsurface resources is illegal. He stormed into my kitchen waving papers. Mom, this is your fault. You didn't tell me about this. I leaned against the counter, calm as the morning sun. Ethan, I warned you about rushing into things. Greed blinds even the smartest people. Clara tried to calm him down, but I could see her confidence fading. Her loyalty to Ethan was crumbling under the weight of truth. The following week, more notices arrived. The silver veins were now legally protected under my name. And because of the paperwork I had signed years ago, Ethan was responsible for ensuring the land remained intact. One night, Ethan barged into my room. "This is war, Margaret. You're going to pay for this." "War?" "No, Ethan. This isn't war. This is patience. This is justice. You wanted to take my land, my daughter, and my life's work. And I let you do it. Until now." He laughed bitterly. "You old witch. You'll regret this." "Regret?" I whispered, stepping closer. "I already buried it, literally. The thing you were too blind to see. The treasure that belongs to me. And now, you're trapped. You can't sell, you can't escape. And most importantly, you've lost Clara's trust. Forever." Clara watched silently from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Mom. I didn't know, I swear." "I know, Clara," I said softly. "But you still allowed him to push you into betrayal. Some lessons are learned the hard way." Ethan spent weeks trying to fix the problem. Lawyers, calls, threats, everything failed. Every action he took only reinforced his legal and financial liability. The stress changed him. He became erratic, desperate, and furious. Meanwhile, Clara began to see him for who he really was. The man she married, manipulative, greedy, selfish, had finally shown his true colors. One evening, Clara approached me quietly in the kitchen. "Mom, I can't stay with him." "I can't." I nodded, understanding her silently. "Then leave, Clara. But remember, the ranch will always be mine. And greed always carries a price." By the end of the month, Ethan's world was crumbling. He couldn't sell the ranch. He owed back taxes, repair costs, and now he was legally bound to the hidden mineral rights claim. Buyers backed out. Investors disappeared. The man who once swaggered like a king was now begging, panicking, and trapped. Clara left him shortly after, moving to a small apartment nearby. She called me one night. "Mom, understand now. See everything." I should have listened. I smiled faintly. "Better late than never, honey. But some lessons are lifelong." Sitting alone in the porch light, I felt a quiet satisfaction. No celebration. No joy. Just the calm that comes when justice is served. Slow, patient, and perfectly precise. I looked at the land, the barn, the silver veins buried beneath, and whispered to Frank's portrait. We kept our secret safe, and our legacy intact. They thought they could take what was ours. But greed never wins in the end. The wind rustled through the trees. The ranch stood silent, proud, and untouchable. Nay, I was finally free. Sometimes revenge isn't about shouting or fighting. It's about letting the earth, the law, and time do the work. And when they finally see the truth, it's too late to turn back. Victory is not always loud. Sometimes it's silent. A quiet smile in the dark while the people who tried to hurt you crumble under their own greed. Months had passed since Ethan realized the trap I had set. His confidence was shattered. Clara had moved out, living in a modest apartment, finding herself again. And the ranch. It stood untouched, proud and mine, as it always should have been. Ethan called once, pleading, desperate. Margaret, can fix this. Let's make a deal. I didn't even respond. Why would I? He had already revealed his true nature. No charm, no promises, no threats could undo the consequences he brought on himself. Sitting on the porch, I watched the sun set over the hills. The same hills Frank had built fences on, the same fields we'd walked together. I felt an emptiness in my chest. Not sorrow, not joy, but a hollow calm. Clara came to visit occasionally. She never mentioned Ethan, never asked about him. The girl who once blindly followed her husband now understood the depth of deception, greed, and trust. One evening she sat beside me quietly. "Mom, I understand why you did it. I'm sorry I didn't see it before." "Clara," I said softly, "sometimes people make choices they can't take back. I hope you've learned from yours." She nodded. Tears fell, but her expression was sober, like a student who had finally passed a painful lesson. Ethan's downfall continued quietly. Investors pulled out, debt collectors chased him, buyers backed off. The ranch couldn't be sold without government approval. The silver vein beneath its soil legally belonged to me, and the liability of maintaining the property rested entirely on him. He became a shadow of the man who once flaunted his power and charm. Desperate calls, failed negotiations, and mounting stress had stripped him of arrogance. All his schemes crumbled, and I watched in silence. No celebrations, no gloating, just quiet satisfaction. Late one night, I stood alone in the barn, tracing my hands over the old wooden beams. I thought about Frank. How he would have smiled at my patience, my careful planning. "You did it, Maggie," I whispered to his photo on the wall. "You always said the quiet ones are the most dangerous. And you were right." I knew the lesson had been delivered. Ethan had been exposed. Clara had learned. And the ranch, our legacy, remained untouched. There was sadness, yes. A mother's sadness to see her daughter manipulated, to watch greed destroy a relationship. But that sadness was intertwined with satisfaction. The satisfaction that comes when justice is served slowly, meticulously, and perfectly. The ranch was quiet again. The horses grazed. The wind whispered through the trees. And I, Margaret Hale, stood tall, knowing that sometimes revenge isn't about punishment or shouting. It's about letting the world, time, and patience do the work, and then standing there quietly, watching the balance finally return. They thought they could steal my life, my home, my daughter's loyalty. But I had a secret and I kept it safe. They lost everything and I am still here. The sun dipped below the horizon. The land glowed golden. And in that light I felt free.